AskReddit by Bartertown Beer. What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera, 1 hour in. This is the opposite route here, but I found it amusing. My boss was out of town and I managed a tea shop near a Starbucks years ago. This kid came in, foreign, and said he was supposed to start today. We were hiring and I trained him, etc. My boss came back 2 days later and had no idea. The kid was in the wrong place, but he stayed with us. Hired on the spot without even applying. Would be funny to see a comment from the Starbucks manager of having to fire his new hiree that never showed up on day 1 further down in this thread. New guy drove a forklift into a fire hydrant in front of a safety rep for the company. His supervisor was called over, and he immediately tells the supervisor that he won't pass a piss test, as he used his only bottle of clean piss earlier that day when he hired him. Everybody standing there immediately burst into laughter, which continued as security, also laughing, escorted him off-site. Even the supervisor was all smiles, just gave him a pat on the back and wished him the best of luck. It was wild. This is certainly the happiest firing on this page, lol. Hope the guy is doing well. A week. I worked in a bar and a new girl started. At work, she seemed a little rough but was fine. One day she finished a shift, sat at the bar and ordered a red wine with lemonade and ice in it. Not really relevant to the story, just shows she is clearly insane. Her boyfriend came in. They had a huge domestic in front of my manager and several customers, and she threw her drink over her BF and dramatically stormed out. New bar drink. Wine plus lemonade equals a domestic. Heard this from a manager I worked with when I worked in fast food. There was this one kid who didn't show up for work. He ditched work often, so the manager called around, couldn't get anyone to fill in his shift, so she had to fill it for him. A few hours into his shift, the dude ditching shows up, with his friends, and orders food from that manager. She fired him on the spot. Edit, these were my first awards, and y'all just multiplied my karma by 10. Thanks y'all for the likes and awards. Congratulations, you've been promoted to a customer. First day of work, he walks in. Says what the fuck is up, dumbest to the guy that parked next to, didn't touch, his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for, on visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. I want to see the interest rate for a first day of work loan. We had a recent college grad that would use his corporate card for personal purchases. He figured that the company would just keep deducting from his payroll until it was paid off. He was fired after 3 months of constant reminders to stop doing it. I don't think it qualifies as the fastest, because he lasted 3 months, but it was so idiotic. I work construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back. Took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. They quit a construction job to steal and split the cash from a few coffee orders. I imagine if they had stayed and worked a full day they would have earned more than that. Guy got hired. While going through orientation realized that his ex-GF worked there too. Turned around and walked right out the front door. My man. Not sure if it counts as being fired, but a guy in our basic training threatened a drill sergeant with a bayonet. No idea what happened after he went to the hospital, but I didn't see him again. I choose to believe that the DS yelled at him with extreme dedication until he needed medical assistance. Worked in a grocery store for a while. New guy took a lobster out of the tank and removed the elastic bands on its claws, then proceeded to put it back in the tank. The thing murdered all the other lobsters in the tank. I was halfway expecting a theft attempt by putting said live and free lobster down his pants. Deleted. I heard a guy say that in his job interview. He was quite desperate for a job. The interviewer was the general manager, and she just got up and left him sitting there. He sat there for a bit before he came to ask what was going on, and she said that she's the GM, and if he won't listen to women there's no point in her saying anything else. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a co-worker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Edit. It was at a Publix. No, it was not Jamies Winston. Did this young man happen to win the Heisman Trophy? New guy started on Monday and was gone by Friday. The guy hit some racking in the warehouse with the forklift. Boss saw him do it, and the guy decided to lie about it when asked if he knew what happened. Deleted. This was a pizza place I worked at in college. New guy was started on Thursday. Fine worker, we showed him the ropes. He was on subs, which is the easiest job. The instructions are right in front of your face. Friday he no call no shows, it's Friday. The busiest night of the week. And he and I were the only kitchen workers that weren't also drivers. Monday a police officer shows up at the restaurant looking for him. No idea what happened as he wasn't there. Tuesday the owner informed me he was let go. Probably had a warrant and boss found out. Couldn't pass the simple tests given at the end of new hire orientation. Yelled at test facilitator when she wouldn't just take the test for him. Sounds like an engineer my company hired. He was a PhD and really hit it off with the guys in management. Had some female colleagues working under his direction, and he was an absolute dick, demeaned their work, blamed them for things not working. Now my colleagues were excellent formulation chemists. He was brought on to lead a new formulation project and it wasn't working. He would tell them how to do it and it never worked. He kept blaming them for doing it wrong. My co-worker got fed up and called him on his bullshit during a big meeting with a prepared presentation describing what they tried, how thoroughly they tried it, why what he proposed would never work, and an alternative solution. He was pissed, but the management guys were extremely knowledgeable and started asking him questions, and it was clear he couldn't answer. Turns out, his wife has a PhD too, and she pretty much did all of his degree work for him. Both from a culture where women are not treated equally. He knew absolutely nothing. Not only that, but once everyone got to talking, it was clear just how massive an asshole this guy was. Sadly, my colleagues had to deal with this for months before everything was said and done. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing, and he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. Guy got hired, went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor. He disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as fuck on like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle, staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30+ minutes. Edit to clear up some questions. I worked at Home Depot. He was in the aisle where we sell bathroom countertops and medicine cabinets. We also have mirrors in this aisle and that's where he was. Not in the bathroom, haha. Co-worker quit his job, great pay, great benefits to work in a radio repair place. I mean, gotta do what you love, and he was also a big radio enthusiast. Got fired the first day on the job for stealing parts for his own radios at home. Took him over a year to get back with us. Surprised they rehired him. He then got fired for being a security risk about a year or so later. Christ, he could have just asked if he could rummage through the e-waste bins. Most places are fine with that shit growing legs. Where to begin? One person didn't show up for their second day, citing culture shock, and then spent at least an hour each day complaining about everything to HR. They were gone inside of a month. Some other bloke refused to follow processes and called his manager an irrelevant woman in team meetings. Gone within a week. My favorite was technically a new co-worker from my perspective only, as I'd only just become aware of their existence. They interpreted "we're going to retire that server from production as we're going to throw the hardware off of the roof into a skip," and proceeded to head down to the data center, power the thing off in the middle of the day, drive to his friend's office, plug the box in and deploy a bunch of IVR scripts he derived from our proprietary scripts so they could run a bunch of psychic and sex hotlines. He was gone within 10 minutes of getting that server back. Corporate chain restaurant. New server, aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms, with other guests clearly in there using the urinal, and started doing lines of blow off on the edge of the sink. Why not just do it in the back with the cooking staff like everyone else? I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first WTF, but I went with it because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch and this dude was in my office chair, zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never used that temp agency again. Air duster, like most inhalants, can kill you in a snap. Lucky you found an idiot and not a corpse. 5 days. My boss hired an executive chef. Dude didn't even know how to make a quesadilla. Well duh, you pick those in the wild. Deleted. One of our better programmers sleeps through meetings regularly. Partially passive aggressive bullshit, partly because he works so many hours that he needs getting an occasional break from the stress. New director starts, at lunchtime goes to cafeteria, pays for the first salad plate, by weight, then goes back twice for refills without paying. Cafeteria has cameras, cafeteria manager talks to the partner in charge. New director fired before the end of day. Director exclamation point. I would assume a director level position would be paid enough to buy his own lunch salad. As a teenager, I worked at a bowling alley. Within an hour, a new girl was fired on the spot for dropping a ball on the foot of a complaining patron. Was this on purpose or accident? She was hired because the manager thought she was hot. Turned out she was 15 and unable to actually work there. Kinda reminds me of my old boss at GoMestop. The dude was 40 plus but always tried to hang out and chill with the much younger staff, and altogether just not really acting his age. He was also a hornball that would hire nearly any female applicant, regardless of what was on their application or how fucking stupid they were. One example I can recall is him hiring a 16-17-year-old girl for a seasonal position that didn't know the alphabet in order. I had asked her to reshelve game boxes in alphabetical order, and I watched her face contort while staring at the wall, muttering something that sounded like she was trying to remember the alphabet song. She stayed on for the whole holiday season. Guy had been working a few days at a barn. Decided to smoke right by bales of hay. Manager saw him and fired him right on the spot. At farms, you don't fuck around with fire. A man was hired to do stock at a tea store that sold lots of delicate china. Manager walked into the back on his third day and saw him just throwing boxes of teacups and teapots. Instantly fired. Deleted. Didn't like the boss and on the first day took a piss in the gas tank of his Jeep. Bragged about it and it was recorded too. I think you've understated the effort involved. This was his first day. He could have chosen just to reject the job, but he thought no. I shall give him what he deserves. About 35 minutes. I hired a guy to work for me as quality inspector for merchandise headed to Walmart and Amp, Target. He bragged about everything he stole from his last job during training and how they paid him more than I did. Well, I'm not holding him back from all that money, so I had some big guys escort him off the property. Had a guy say similar things about his old job once, and that they were really positive about him. Manager was happy to hear he would not be without a job for long when he fired him. Why even say stuff like that? Edit. So this comment tripled my Reddit karma. 3 hours into the first shift. Guy lost it serving an annoying customer in a grocery shop. Throw a cabbage at her. The manager came and told him to go home cause he finished there. He wasn't surprised. I was standing next to him. It was an entertaining day. Did she deserve the cabbage? Day 1 of training. Within the 6th hour of her 8-hour shift. Worked in a rolled crank handle service elevator at a private residential condominium for very wealthy people. We told him just shut up and stare straight ahead. Don't speak unless spoken to. Cause old rich people are mean and don't care about you. Well, what's the new guy do? Starts a conversation right away and asks the resident, how much money do you make? Edit. To be more clear, it was a 1920s skyscraper in downtown. 4 or so hours. When I was 18 I got a job at a grocery store, along with 3 others. We all started training together. On the first day we were training in the evening, and one girl asked to go home. She said her head hurt. They said fine. She clocked out, went to grab a grocery cart and started filling it with beer and liquor. The store manager walked over and asked her if she was having a party. She said yes. Didn't even try to come up with an excuse. Just, yeah, I am. So I needed to leave early on my first day, basically. He fired her. Do I still get the employee discount? Coworker. Smoked like every 40 minutes for like 10 minutes. Then asked the boss if he could leave an hour early because he didn't take his lunch break. As my boss said, sure you can, but you don't need to come back. Where I worked my boss gave benefits for workers who didn't smoke. This happened because smoking is really popular in my state. He didn't show up the first day, second day, or third day. I had to work a double shift for 3 days straight. Not fun. I answered the phone when he finally called in on the 4th day. He said, I'm going to be honest with you, I've been in Orlando. My parents paid for a small vacation as a reward for getting the job. Would it be okay to start next week instead of this week? What better way to celebrate the end of unemployment than taking a little break from work? Guy showed up to work on his first day with the smell of alcohol on his breath. 7 AM. When questioned he admitted to taking a couple swigs on the ways in to calm his first day nerves. Yeah, fired on the spot. Worked here less than 20 minutes. This was just a summer job at a fast food place. We had a new girl start and within 2 days it was apparent she was an idiot and everyone knew that. You could already see the manager questioning his decision. Then on her 3rd day of work she said she couldn't come in because her mom was in a car accident and in the hospital. Turns out that's an easy thing to disprove in a relatively small town. Semi-related, but back in high school I tried to call out by saying I had car trouble and it had to be towed. My boss then says, oh no problem. I have to pick up my daughter from practice who is out your way anyway, so I can give you a ride. I ended up driving my car out behind my house and parked it on the lawn to hide it and took his ride. Pretty awkward conversation with my parents later about why my car was in their backyard and my boss was dropping me off. This guy hadn't even started yet and just had his introductory email sent out to the whole company, which ended with incredibly explicit details about himself. He got fired before he even started. Email https://imgur.com/a/z008pct close bracket. Edit. Wow, this is blowing up. I don't have a lot more context I can give as it all happened so fast. Somehow the company deleted the email from our cloud inboxes when this was sent, but not before a colleague grabbed a screenshot of it first. He was going to be a tier 2 tech for the ad company I work at a couple years back. He supposedly apologized profusely, saying his friend played a prank on him, but the damage had already been done. Lol, this reads like a Tinder or FetLife profile. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some downhole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned a night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't, hence sticking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired, but it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto that program, and I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van, and despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, Buddy just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February. Too good for the drillers maybe. Lol, why wasn't his truck even turned on? Where I live work vehicles don't even get shut off during February. My document processing clerk was getting married and going on his honeymoon, so I got a short-term temp. It wasn't a temp to hire. Everything was out in the open through a legit temp agency who generally did pretty good screening. The temp's very first day, they show up with a box of things. Photos, mugs, office equipment, pen cup, task light, etc. Stuff to decorate a cubicle with. I advised them not to unpack, we were getting right into training. Within 2 hours after I cut them loose on a computer with a "let me know if you need anything or have any questions," they said, "This mouse is hurting my wrist." It gave me carpal tunnel. I'm going to need workers' comp paperwork. I made an immediate call to the agency ending this contract, then told the temp, "Your paperwork is at the temp agency office. Go ahead and go see your rep there." They left their box of stuff behind. I'm baffled that there are people out there who would try something like this. In their minds, they didn't pick the job to earn an honest wage but to commit workers' comp fraud. Worked at a steel processing plant, polishing, cut to length, etc. Everyone started off as temps, some 4 years, before getting hired in. Management decided they were short-staffed and the solution was to start hiring people full-time off the street. So this dude starts, full-time on day 1, full benefits, more money, getting trained by temps who've been there for months, if not years. Everyone is mad resentful of this dude, obviously. Halfway through his second day he gets escorted out for testing positive for coke on his drug test. Coke stays in your system for like 2-3 days. They didn't hire any more dudes full-time off the street. Before their first day on orientation, I got hired for a manufacturing job through Manpower, a temp agency. Me and a friend of my wife were both supposed to start on Monday at the plant for a week-long orientation. She got into a fender bender on her way to orientation, and called them to say that she'd be a bit late, that she just needed to wait on the police to give a statement. The manager told her not to bother ever coming in. Girl was torn up. She took pictures and the police report into the hiring manager, tried to explain things to the company HR managers, but no dice. She was fired before ever clocking in. Oh man, that stinks. It was out of her control, mostly. I worked for a small city in LA for many years. I was on the board that interviewed for a new intern for the recreation department. We went through the process, made our choice, made the job offer to a nice, smart girl fresh out of college. She was a little bit of a hippie, casual, relatable. It was fine, all accepted. The girl showed up with her gigantic pet, anaconda, edited, python wrapped around her neck on the first day. She took casual to a whole new level, right back out the door. We hired candidate number 2 instead. My sister was fired one day one. My dad had his own small medical practice and would hire me and my sisters as our first job to be his receptionist and file insurance claims, so we could get some workplace experience before we went job hunting in the larger world. My older sister worked for him in high school for a year. I worked for him for 2 years. Then it came time for my younger sister to take over. I brought her to work to start training and said the number one rule in the office was, at work he's not dad, he's the doctor and the boss. She sassed him in front of a patient her first day, with all the venom and sarcasm a teenage girl can muster when dealing with a parent asking her to do something. He fired her on the spot and I had dragged her out of there. Mom told her at least she'd get paid for the couple of hours she managed to be employed. Edited, my first wholesome award. Thanks. Remember, at work, he's not telling dad jokes, he's telling doctor jokes. He was escorted out by security on his second day, and promptly delivered to waiting police officers, about 5 of them. He'd apparently beaten his wife pretty severely and then just left for work like NBD. Never thought that they'd come looking for him. I don't know if this counts as fired or quitting, but I was working at a grocery store, and in the morning we have to unpack the stuff from the truck. Well, this girl was on her second day, first time throwing truck, and she asked the manager to go out to her car to get something really quick. Long story short, she just drove off in the middle of her shift and never came back for another. Had a girl show up for her first day, then no call no show for the next 3 days. Needless to say, she was off the schedule by the 4th day. I was fired on my second day as a line cook at a Bitzel's restaurant in Washington State back in the 90s. Turns out I was hired just to threaten the job security of a long-time line cook with an attitude problem, to keep him in line. He got the message and apologized to the manager, and I was fired for breaking a yolk when flipping fried eggs one time. I'd been a line cook for a few years by then and thought I was doing pretty good. I was taken out the back door and terminated on day 2. Edit, this really seems to be blowing up. Happened in Oak Harbor back in mid-1990s, so yes, I did find another job since then. I was pissed, but got over it quickly. Cooking for a living was hard work, standing in a hot kitchen for 10 hours at a time, going home splattered with grease, getting yelled at by wait staff and management. I don't do it anymore. Thanks for all the HUGZ awards, guys. That's fucked up. Deleted. Not a bookkeeper, can you explain the left and right thing? Also, how often do you hear that bookkeeper and bookkeeping are the only non-hyphenated words in the English language with 3 consecutive double letters? Edit, thanks everyone, I get it now. Glad there are so many accountants on here. Also, I've never heard of Encyclopedia Brown.